Welcome to Paranormal Latte Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Sit back and relax with us. Grab yourself a really good drink. Spend an hour and let's delve into a world of chatter about the mysteries of the unexplained. Whether you are a skeptic or a believer makes no difference. It's not always in your imagination. Enjoy your day. Now that was good. We are broadcasting on the United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Radio Networks 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests do not necessarily reflect those of the audience, United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Radio Networks, its hosts, affiliates, and/or Paranormal Latte Podcast, Paranormal Universal Press LLC, and Diamond Point Entertainment LLC. This show is pre-recorded. Now that was good. Good day, everyone, and thanks again for joining me for yet another episode of Paranormal Latte Podcast. My name is Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. I am the host and the producer of this show. We have a guest that I have had on other programs of mine before. Jason Carpenter is with us today, and he is quite an exceptional storyteller. Jason has always had an interest in the paranormal, but after turning 17, he began to experience the unknown and the unseen himself. From hearing ghostly voices in empty rooms to having interactions with the entities known as the shadow people, Jason's life became permanently bonded to the world of the unexplained. He now hosts and continues to host and is at 1,500 different segments on his program, Dead Rabbit Radio. Over the course of his time doing podcast work, he has investigated over 2,000 different tales of real-life high strangeness. Jason hopes that by seeking out the truths in the stories of others, he might be able to make sense of his own life experiences. He is quite a guy, and I'm glad to have him return. Please welcome to the show my good friend, Jason Carpenter. Well, hello, Jason, and thanks again for returning to the show.
Hi. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, I think I was trying to remember how long ago it was that you and I had our very first acquaintance with each other, and it might have been 2-3 years ago. So I am very happy to have Jason back because I think you're in for a real treat tonight, and I just love him. And so we're just going to get started so you get acquainted. So Jason, what I'm going to do first and foremost is just have you go back to one of your earlier experiences of when you might have had something either otherworldly, paranormal, whatever, something that all of us made you sit and think twice. And what was that? How old were you? And we'll evolve it from there.
Okay, well, I grew up, I think like a lot of us grew up watching those paranormal shows on television, and the Time Life Mysteries of the World books always intrigued me. Always believed in ghosts, but I hadn't seen one. I never saw one until I was 17. That was when I had my first paranormal encounter. I actually didn't even see it. I heard it. I was in bed all alone in the house, and I was reading a book, and I came across the word I didn't understand. The word I remember to this day was ubiquitous, which, I didn't understand it. And so I kept repeating it over and over in my head to try to figure out the context. And I repeated it over and over in my head. And then I heard a voice, clear as day, standing right next to me, say, enough. And at that point, I knew I was the only one in the house. There was no one in the room. And I just reached over, shut the light off, and went to bed, which seems like an unnatural reaction when you hear a ghost for the first time. But our bodies, our minds, we do very normal things after abnormal events. And the weirdest thing about that was, one, it was a disembodied voice. It was the first time I'd ever heard anything like that. But also, it was reading my mind, because I wasn't saying the word out loud. I was thinking it over and over again. So after that, it kind of confirmed what I always believed, and I always enjoyed reading about the paranormal. And probably for the next 10 to 12 years, I was seeing a lot of paranormal activity and interacting with it a lot. It was quite a crazy decade.
When you talk about seeing something, and yes, I know that voice that can once in a while, but my voices, the voices that have come to me have been, I don't know if you've ever had this. I have always had a difficult time getting up in the morning when I was younger to go to work. And sometimes I would have something scream inside, scream to wake me up, and not necessarily to scare me, but just to shake me enough where I would wake up and go, oh geez, kind of like an alarm clock. But I did have once what I would refer to as like a hag, that witchy, screamy voice. That's when I was in I've haunted many homes that I've lived in, but that's when I realized that there was something else hanging about. Have you ever had anything like that scream in your ear or make that awful sound?
Not that I can really recall. When you have a lot of paranormal experiences, it's interesting because some of them start to fall to the wayside as far as the memory goes. But I don't think so. That first time was one of the few times that I heard something. Most of the time after that, I was seeing things. I did have an encounter, which to me terrifies me as a paranormal investigator, where something imitated my voice and called other people over to a location that I was at. And they came around the corner. We were out in the middle of nowhere, and we knew this area was haunted. That's why we were out there. They came around the corner, and I, was like, what are you guys doing here? What are you guys doing here? And they heard me not only speaking, they heard me yelling for help. Hey, guys, help! Help, get over here! Wow. And then maybe a year later, I had an experience where I was in a place that was haunted, and I was screaming for help. I was downstairs. I wasn't screaming for help. Let's back up there. I was yelling a girl's name who was also there. I was yelling, and she didn't hear me. And that was terrifying as well because we were so close. We were only separated by a floor. It was a 2-story apartment. And she goes, I can hear when my mom cooks downstairs. That's how bad the soundproofing is. So it really made me realize that the paranormal can not only imitate your voice, but it can also block your screams.
That's very true.
Yeah, it's very terrifying because you think we're going to go to different parts of this house for this location, this investigation. I'll go in this room, you go in that room, and something could go wrong and no one will even know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I've had that. I do know that it can be very confusing. I do know, too, that a few years back, my husband was we were on a trip, a vacation, and we were in this hotel that was knowingly haunted. But the things that I had heard that were in there was like maybe a butler or something that would come to the door, or knock on the door, or a little kid or something that would pace up and down the hallway. Well, my husband screamed. He was taking a shower, and he screamed out, "Did you say something?" He really thought that and there was a whisper of a woman that whispered into his ear while he was in the shower. And so that terrified him. And so I was sitting on the couch where you could hear a pin drop, right? Reading a pamphlet. And I'm like, what is his problem? So then I went in there and I said, what? He goes, did you say something? Did you need something? Because I just heard something in my ear. And you know what? For a guy who's very Catholic, and everything. He's had enough experiences now to know better to say that something doesn't exist. So that's scary, Jason, because the thing is, when you get blocked like that and you're screaming for help and something is blocking that, the sound, that can be rather tricky sometimes. Have you had that more than once or just that time?
That was that one time. I had the one time it imitated me, and then at a different location, different year, it blocked the sound. But that has made me very leery about doing on-the-ground ghost hunts. Generally, we were doing a lot of that stuff back in the late 90s, early 2000s, so cell phones were still a novelty. But, the best thing to do is to be in pairs for situations like that. But again, if there's two of you in a room screaming at the top of your lungs, doesn't really make a difference.
Doesn't make a difference.
No one can hear. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so
she was telling me about this quote-unquote doppelganger thing. Have you had that yet at all? Yet?
I have not had that happen to me, but could I share a quick story that I covered on my podcast about that? We cover a lot of doppelganger stories on the show, and a lot of them play out just like that. And it's always really eerie. But the craziest one I've ever covered was, I don't remember the exact location, but you had a group of men, they were on their ATVs, and their job was to herd cattle. It was modern day. And a guy's on his ATV, and he sees the rancher's son on his ATV speed past him. Okay, he must be trying to get in front of the cows, whatever. Everyone does their job. When they get back, the rancher's son did not go out that day. No one took his ATV. He stayed at home because he was sleeping off a hangover. So we had a doppelganger that actually not only imitated a person, but a vehicle as well. That is what's so weird about this phenomenon. I think a lot of times it could be a spirit mimicking somebody. Some people think it's a time glitch or a dimensional glitch. But the idea that whatever this phenomenon is could actually, he goes, when I saw the rancher's son that morning, he was wearing the same clothes as the guy on the ATV. It was him.
Yep.
So stuff like that, that's what I love about the paranormal. You just never know what you're going to experience yourself or just by researching other stories.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is I just interviewed someone a couple months ago, I think, who was telling the story of how somebody said to him, I said something to you at this event, and you just ignored me and walked past me like you didn't even know who I was. And I'm like, what? And she took a picture of him. He never went to the event, and she sent the picture, and it was identical. It was him.
That's crazy.
Took a picture, and it's like, but she was so baffled. She's like, why on earth did you ignore me like that? We've been good friends or whatever. I said hi, and you just walk right past. He goes, because I wasn't there. And he goes, yes, you were. And then she showed him the picture, and it was him in the picture. And it wasn't him. It was a doppelganger. There was also one from Skinwalker Ranch when I was out there interviewing the guys a few years back. And it just so happens I was talking to one of the kids who slept down in the lower level area, and they had asked, they had heard and saw something that looked like their dad walking down there with a flashlight. And so they said, what were you looking for last night, Dad? He says, what are you talking about? Well, you were downstairs with a flashlight walking around. What were you looking for? I wasn't downstairs last night. I was bad. I never went downstairs at all. So there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens on their properties. But that's fascinating, Jason. And I hope that, we all know that we have like a double somewhere on this.
Yeah.
We've always been told this, and I think it would be creepy to actually come face to face with our double, I think it'd be just creepy. It's like, do you think like I do? Do you act like I do? What kind of degrees do you have? It's just, do you have the expense that went along with the degrees? How did you find a way to pay them off? That kind of, but it's very fascinating. Yeah, I love the fact that you do that. So when I met you, back in the day, which is just so cool. You had given you were giving a presentation at a conference that I was also at, and it was on. I wanted to start it out with bathroom ghosts, because I did when I did my children's video. This was long before I even met Jason, but anyway, that's how they met. They were in the bathroom. But I want you to talk a little bit about bathroom ghosts. Let's start with that.
So one of the things, because, with the podcast, we're at 1,500 episodes. We just hit that a couple days ago.
Goodness.
So I'm constantly reading material to have enough stuff for the show. And you start to notice patterns when you're just reading that much. And I was coming across a bunch of stories about haunted bathrooms just kind of randomly. And I usually covered them on the show because it's funny, sometimes very terrifying, because it's where you're the most vulnerable. Yeah. The shower, the toilet, you're just you can't do much. Your options are limited.
Yeah.
And so I gave this presentation, and I had a bunch of stories about people who had encountered these bathroom ghosts. One of them was a young boy. Every time he took a shower, every single time in this particular apartment, he would visualize in his mind's eye a woman who was bisected. And she was dragging the top half of her torso on the ground, walking towards the shower that he was in. And he couldn't shake it. He goes, I had to learn how to take a shower in like 30 seconds because I was always terrified about what would happen if she reached me. And it's all these crazy stories, some funny, some terrifying. And I gave my presentation. And what was really, really interesting, I think the best stuff of that presentation was told to me afterwards. Because once I got off stage, I had multiple paranormal investigators tell me, dude, that happens all the time. They were surprised that they hadn't really put that together. And there was a lot of people coming up with theories. One person said, I think I said on stage it was probably the running water, because we know that running water can energize spirits.
Yeah.
But someone else was pointing out, porcelain, a lot of especially old bathrooms use limestone in the tiles. And we know limestone can charge ghosts.
Right.
Other people were pointing out the copper piping can also give more energies to these ghosts. And Rocky Smith of the Oregon Ghost Conference, he came up to me afterwards and he goes, what's really funny? He goes, I never really thought about it, but he did notice a pattern. He goes, if I was doing a ghost investigation and we lose it, like the devices stop going off, it seems to have disappeared. He goes, I always check the bathroom. I always go into the bathroom after that. And he goes, and it's always there. So ghosts maybe find some sort of solace in there. Maybe it does allow them to recharge. But that was really cool to do kind of this funny topic with real stories and then get off stage and have paranormal investigators say, oh, no, that's actually a legit thing. Like, that's not just random stories you found. That actually is a pattern. So that was a lot of... I love going to the conventions for that sense of community, which you don't get when you're just recording a podcast.
Yeah.
The audience is your community, but having other paranormal investigators add on to the research in the moment, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's the part I like too. And, I know that I think you were on the same panel as I think. You may, oh no, you were sitting, we were at the Port Gamble conference. So there's two conferences. We've been at both of them together. And I do remember this now. You were sitting out in the audience, and it was maybe like an author's panel or something crazy like that. And this room, you might remember this woman raising her hand and saying, I've tried so often to convince my friends, my skeptical friends, that this stuff is really real, but they won't listen to me, and blah, 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 blah. And I do remember holding the microphone in my hand and basically saying to her, do you see all these people around here? These people aren't going to judge you. These people are quite open to what's happening out there. It's not like we're some weird, and I have to emphasize this, we're not a weird cult. There are hundreds of thousands of us who have had experiences, but we have learned, just like talking about religion, that we have to keep our mouths shut because people might label us as goofy or weird. We can't help it that our sensitivities or experiences have brought us to a point where we start to recognize that something seems a little bit different different than before. But do you remember the next day or whatever when I remember sitting at my vendor table, and you had said to me, or you said to the audience, while you were speaking, do you remember that there was something that came over the intercom or something that...
Yeah.
And I just I do recall hearing something, but I thought that they accidentally had the microphone in their hand back there, and they might have
remember that. Yeah,
talked about it. But it was like something was commenting. I don't even know if you even remember what the comment was, but they were responding to something, or they were saying something, and it came right over the whole thing. Yeah, you brought that.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly what they said, but I do remember that moment. It was clear as day.
Yeah, it was.
That as you were talking, somebody said something.
Yeah.
And I felt it wasn't mic related, and it turned out not to be microphone related.
Yeah.
Because I think, you looked into it, and, they didn't do it, but it didn't sound like a mic. It sounded like a loud whisper, if that makes sense. The neat thing about Port Gamble is that place is haunted. The whole town is haunted.
Yeah.
And that facility is haunted where we have it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but the convention center in Seaside, where the Oregon Ghost Conference is haunted, is held. That convention center is haunted. There is an entire hallway of that convention center they do not let us go into.
Huh. I didn't even know
they
that.
Use it. Yeah, Rocky mentioned it one day, kind of offhand. He goes, yeah, that's where you guys aren't allowed to. There's a whole long hallway that they just used to load and unload.
Yeah.
And it's haunted. And he goes, that's one of the reasons the Oregon Ghost Conference used to be held in Oregon City and Seaside, because it's a big conference. And Seaside was like, hey, why don't you come to our place? By the way, it's haunted. And Rocky goes, okay, let's go check that out. But yeah, all of the ghost investigations we do and all of the seminars, they do not let us go in the hallway. The energy is that intense, which is crazy to think about.
Well, it is, especially if people want to at least give it a whirl and see what they can grab out of there.
Yeah.
I know that I had to get I'd asked them for a step stool because I'm short and I needed to, and so we went behind the curtain this guy came up. He was nice enough to try to help me find something that I could stand on. It was a cinder block in the end, but we went behind the curtain. I thought, ew, it's kind of creepy back here. Yeah. For all I know, it's adjacent to the hallway that they're talking about. He brought out a cinder block and I stood on it, but kicked it to the side afterwards. That's what happens when you're short and you have a podium that's taller than you. They never see you. I didn't even know that. That's very interesting. But that place as well, there seems to be some kind of I don't know, there's an energy around a lot of these places where Jason and I have both been to, especially with our speaking. And and I'm a beacon, and I know you're probably a beacon too because you've done this so much. But I'm on 24/7. I can't give it a rest because when they want to come, they come in. When they want to act up, they act up, and I just get used to it. But out there, I have had experiences. That's very fascinating. The other thing with the bathrooms, too, is that there was a gentleman that I knew a long time ago who talked about the mirrors. Now, what do you know about the mirrors in the bathroom? Because they love to hide in mirrors and do whatever. True. What do you know about that?
I hadn't really explored that. It's funny because the bathrooms not only have mirrors, it's really the only room in the house that have multiple mirrors.
Yeah.
Usually a door mirror and then a shaving mirror or a makeup mirror.
Yep.
And it would give them that ability, those reflections, especially if they're bouncing off of each other. Bathrooms are, we do what we can to make bathrooms comfortable, but at the end of the day, they're very sterile environments. They're almost like a hospital. We can put on all of the nice little fluffy toilet seats and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it's built to serve one purpose, and it is it's sterile. And so it almost seems like it's, nature abhors a vacuum. Something else could go in there and make it their own, because it's not super comfortable for us to spend a prolonged amount of time in.
Oh,
It's just not
exactly.
designed that way.
Well,
Yeah.
especially if you're a female, and those of you that are female out there know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a lot of people now that go into these stalls just to play on their phones or to look at do their texting or whatever, and they use
Yeah.
that as their place of solace. And before, it's like,
Yeah.
how long do you really want to spend in a bathroom, especially a woman? And it's just like, good Lord, yeah. On that note, though, speaking of, I know one of the first topics that he had brought up at one of the conferences about was, and you know what, it's very true, because I had some really incredible dream last night. Why are there, it seems like in our dreams, or why do there not seem to be fat ghosts? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was, I came across that on Reddit. Someone asked that question, why are there no fat ghosts? And, in my search for constant content, I kind of chuckled and went about my day. But it stuck with me. That question really stuck with me. And I thought, that's actually a good question. So I started researching it. And, the grim facts is obesity is like I think it's the number 2 most preventable death in the world. Hundreds of millions of people die of it every year. There should be, and we know that not everyone who dies becomes a ghost, but there should be more fat ghosts than there actually are. So what we did in that story, that segment, or that presentation was we highlighted there's very few overweight ghosts. As far as the research that I've come across, there's maybe like 3. And then we have all these other ghosts that had horrible injuries, and their ghost does appear as injured. The Payless Shoe Source ghost was part of that, where it was the story about a young boy who, this was in California, I don't remember the exact time period, but a young boy at this Payless Shoe Source, and they're out of business at this point, but he wanted the shoes that he wanted. His mom wouldn't get it for him, and in a temper tantrum, he ran out of the shoe store and got hit by a car and died at the scene. And he continued to haunt that shoe store, which would be a terrible place for a 10-year-old boy to haunt. But he haunted that shoe store, and it was so intense at one point, one of the patrons was there. She was shopping for shoes, and she grabs a box of shoes off of the shelf, and she opens it up. And it's this assemblage of dead body parts in the shoe box, and then it kind of rises out as a full-formed boy. And I mean, imagine the terror of that. You're just sitting there looking at shoes, and the next thing you know, you're just watching this gory assemblage of body parts fuse into this kid. Now, I think he did that because he wanted to scare her. Like, there's a fear-inducing thing about that. And, we know about Civil War ghosts, headless horsemen, things like that. So if some injuries survive, if you carry on some injuries after death, why not obesity? And really, at the end, I kind of said, I highlighted a story about a woman, a colonial ghost who was seen in a neighborhood. I'll cut to the chase. It was a colonial ghost seen in a neighborhood. But the guy who saw her was looking at her, and he goes, I recognize her. It's my next door neighbor. She died 6 months ago. And what it turned out was this neighbor, she had an aneurysm one night. She was researching a book about colonial women. So she was really thinking about that when she died. So when she appeared in modern times, she was dressed like a colonial woman.
Oh, and
so the idea of how a ghost appears, I think, has a lot to do with how you see yourself. And if you see yourself dying a violent death, your head being decapitated during a motorcycle accident, and you can't get past that, your ghost will have no head. And I go, when I'm overweight, I'm obese, medically classified as obese. When I dream, I'm not fat in my dreams.
Yeah. No.
The only time I'm fat in my dreams is if the dream is about my weight. But other than that, I'm not fat. And I go, I think if I die, when I die, I will appear as a thinner ghost because I don't see myself as fat. And I think that's why there are no fat ghosts, because most overweight, obese people, they still see themselves, their soul, the way they envision their soul, their being is fit. And so when they die, their ghost is of a fit person. So yeah, I really like that. I mean, again, it was just a kind of a joke post I saw on Reddit, and I sat back and go, no, there's actually an interesting reason why there are no fat ghosts. And that's my theory.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And by the way, I am also overweight, but it's terrible when you get of age, because the thing is your whole body changes. And I know many people out here, understand this, but by the way, when I dream, I also dream as if I'm a younger, thinner person in that dream. I have not yet had a dream that I can at least recall where the shape of my own body size is I can vouch with that 100%. The other thing too that goes along with that is like when I photographed this image of this young girl and this older man in the screen window that I always share at these conferences, they showed themselves not only as younger individuals, but that the younger girl, the gal, she appeared like 6 to 8 years old, but she died around age 10. I managed to match her up, but she died 2 miles down the road, and they were traveling together. The guy, same type of thing. He resembled. They say he's either the doctor or my great grandfather. It's one of the two, because the doctor was distraught when she died, and he was just beyond words. And I did find a picture. I did find her doctor's image. I did. I mean, talk about a rarity, right? And but the thing is that so there's the theory behind why these individuals show themselves as a younger self, and of course healthier and happier, is because at that age or whatever they were healthier and happier before they got. Can you imagine? Us seeing all of the. Think about all of and also to be recognized. That's another thing here. Because think about all these, I've had people tell me, so-and-so showed up, or I saw his image or whatever. And how did he look? Well, he looked like a younger individual, was able to figure out who he was. Imagine if he died at an older age and showed up at this older age. You know as well as I do that as you age, everyone almost starts to look like each other too. The face and everything. And it's just like, God, don't they have any features anymore that bring them back to that youthful look? No, not necessarily. They all start looking the same. What are your thoughts about, I don't know, just in general, not just about death in general, but let's say a person's cremated. I mean, the thing is that people say, well, they're not going to go back to their body anyway, or their body's decomposing. They won't even recognize themselves. I don't know. What do you think about ghosts showing themselves as younger individuals that people actually, what do you think about that?
Well, first, to speak on the crematory thing, I used to work at a crematory.
Oh, God, really?
My dad owned one. Yeah, my dad owned one back when I was in high school, all the way up through college and all of that. And the beautiful thing about cremation is that when you don't, we put you in the furnace, we turn it on, and out comes a pile of ashes. But part of that is that every single drop of water in your body, and you're 80% water, goes up into the sky and comes down as rain. Oh, you talk about circle of life. Yeah. It doesn't take months or weeks or years for the body to decompose in a casket, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But you become rain. Because when you pull those ashes out, and anyone who's ever gotten your loved one's ashes, the body that goes in is 180, 200 pounds, or, maybe 120, 150, whatever. Yeah. And you ended up getting a pound or two of ashes. Mm-hmm. Everything else is, nothing vanishes. Nothing that exists vanishes. And I'm not even talking about the soul. Every other piece of that body that is not in that urn went up into smoke, into the sky, and rained down on the world. It's quite a beautiful thing. You can argue, I know some cultures say that the body can't be destroyed that way, but I find it very peaceful, the idea of turning into rain, of being up there in the clouds, that pillar of smoke. Every single thing that's not in that urn they give you is literally in the heavens.
Oh my goodness. I had no idea. I had no idea. I always get creeped out when we're driving somewhere. My husband and I are driving somewhere, and you see the smokestack, right? And I just get creeped out because I was actually, we actually went to Poland, and we went to Auschwitz, and we went to Birkenau, and it is very, very, oh my goodness. Well, the ashes that we were the earth that we were standing on top of, the dirt, may not have been true to this day, but back then, 1 million souls, that was the dirt that we stood on. Were all of the dead people, and then of course the system with however they killed them or how they cremated them and the smoke that came out. Oh my goodness, I never really thought about that, and I had no idea that you had that for a background. Oh my goodness. So
It's interesting stuff when I don't want to go too long into it, but again, the purification of fire, when we would put a body in that had a replacement hip, a titanium hip was put in this person 30 years ago, and we'd burn the body, and then there's a tray that everything kind of falls into, a sifting tray. You would pull out a brand new looking, perfect titanium hip. No blood, no muscle tissue, nothing. I mean, you could read the serial number on it. Because the fire, that heat purifies so much of that body that, you're like, I remember holding this hip bone. It looked like it came right out of a machinist shop. It's very, very fascinating. So everything that's not in that urn goes somewhere. Obviously, the Holocaust, the industrialized slaughter and burning. I do believe, again, like so much of what their bodies did go into the heavens and did rain down, but the ashes obviously were misused, and it was a horrible tragedy. And I mean, that's something else. But some religions, Judaism in particular, they are very, very particular about what happens to the body after death. That was just another horrible thing that they were doing, disgracing that.
Yeah, it's very fascinating, I didn't realize that. I know I used to hear things like the body parts that they had put in, like knees and all that, and like you said, hips. Then they would have this hardware. I mean, I never really thought about that before, about what do you do with that? Do you go and resell it back to the whoever, or do you put it in something and call it a day? I did hear, though, at one point, maybe you can correct me on that, because when they're sweeping the ashes out, that sometimes they might get a little bit of ashes of Fred, who just went before them. I don't know if it's, like it's not all entirely that person. You might have some of the ashes of somebody else being, I don't even know how the process works, but that's what I heard, that sometimes the ashes of somebody else might end up with yours, and yours might end up with somebody else. Is that pretty true? Because I don't know how it really works, or how it worked then.
It's funny because it all depends, just like any business, right? You're going to have auto shops you take your car into, and they're going to go, let's take care of this car. We're going to treat this like our car. We're not going to sit there and bang around on it and try to get stuff loose. We're going to treat this like it's my mom's car. Like my mom brought it into the shop. We're going to work on it like it's my mom's car. Then you have other people that are just kind of banging around in the car. They're trying to get as many cars out as possible. Working at a crematory, you would work with people who were just so respectful of the dead. They just understand it, and they would make sure that didn't happen. They would just make sure. And in California, which is where the crematory was at, I'll tell you this: the state inspectors, they would come through. They would do a drop-in surprise, and if they found any dust anywhere in the crematory, they wipe their finger on it, and they're like, $5,000 fine.
Wow.
They go, you can't prove that's just dust. That's dust that, a place has. Nope, that could be human remains, $5,000 fine.
Wow.
So you had both the regulators making sure that didn't happen, but you also, you would be very respectful, because this is somebody's mom. This is somebody's kid. And we all knew tomorrow it could be us. It's just, you'd get driving accidents, you'd get heart attacks, you would get freak occurrences, and you put them in, and you are very solemn about it, and tomorrow you could be in that machine. So, it could happen. We've all heard the horror stories, of course, in the news of bodies being stacked up and not burned, which I just never understood. It does cost a lot of money to run that furnace, but you do clean it out. And even like that titanium hip, it's considered medical waste. At that point, we'd have to ship it out to someone. they would destroy it. Probably smelt it down. Yeah.
Probably. No, but very interesting. I know that my friend, and he's a skeptic, so I know he's not listening to this program, so I'm going to talk about him. I know when his mom passed away, she got cremated, and he brought her ashes. I don't know if it was all the ashes, but a good significant amount of her ashes. And they went to a place that I used to frequent a lot, which was someplace in Michigan, and it was a sand dune place. I won't name the name of it because I don't need everybody going there to try to find her ashes. But they went to the top of the mound, and which, by the way, I think is against the law or whatever, or against the rules. I don't even know what the rules are on that right now. But they dug a hole. They dug a hole and they put her in right at the top of the sand mound. And of course, the thing is I don't know what happens to ashes when they get wet. I don't know if they turn muddy. I would suspect they do. But, up there with all that sand, I could just see all this sand or the wind blowing off this mound. And then all of a sudden, if they were dry enough still, catching her ashes, and then all of that kind of go floating out in the air, or whatever. I mean, I know there's rules everywhere about what you can and can't do with cremated ashes. I don't know what, I'm not up on the law on that, and so I don't know. Do you know, once you give them back to the people, I guess that's where it ends, huh?
Yeah, people will dispose of them in the way that they choose. Some people will take them out to sea. Some people will keep them on their mantle. There are laws. It is still considered human remains. Yeah. Here's the thing: do people get busted for it? No. I mean, you'd have to find a Coast Guard on a really bad day for him to see someone dump an urn and give them tickets. But legally, it's improper disposal of human remains. I haven't heard of anyone being busted for that. People emptying them out on a cliff, or putting them in the mound if that was a state park or something like that. Yeah. But again, if a ranger comes up to you, you go, "This was my mom's favorite spot. Now she gets to see the sunset every single day." Yeah. The park ranger's probably not going to give you a ticket, but they could. It is improper disposal of human remains.
It was quite risky. I asked him, I said, "That's quite risky to drag a shovel with you and go to the top of a sand mound and bury your mom in the sand mound," which I know to this day that she's there, and I don't know exactly where they put her in there, but I can tell you I frequented that place enough to know that I know it's very popular, and yes, it was like a state park of some sort. Very interesting stuff, which brings me to the question to you of signs. We talk about signs from our loved ones. The thing is it seems like in some way I have had signs. I don't know if you've ever had a sign from anybody per se, but I know coins come up a lot, especially, various coins, different coins, feathers, all these types of things. But you just told me a very interesting situation that just occurred to you. And that's, I don't know if it was some kind of a sign, but why don't you explain what just happened to you, and we can kind of talk through this a little bit.
So, one of the things, when I started doing the podcast, I was obviously really into ghosts and learning about demons and, UFOs and cryptids and all of that stuff. But because you do so many episodes, you do start to go, well, what else is out there in the world? I cover a lot of stuff that happens in America, a lot of stuff that happens in Western Europe. Over the course of the show, I go, jinn, which is for lack of a better term, the Islamic version of a demon. They're considered two separate species. Demons are angels who rebelled against God in the common lore and sent to earth. In the Islamic faith, jinn were the residents of hell before the demons even showed up. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about a completely different species. However, they do interact with humans a lot in the same way. Possession, they do possessions, they do hauntings, and things like that. This is all stuff that I came to learn about when I've been researching the jinn over years. I do an episode here, maybe 30 episodes later, cover it again, and so on and so forth. I'm no expert by any means, but The other day this maybe like 10 days ago, I did an episode about how to exorcise a jinn, how to get a jinn out of you. They don't tend to possess the whole body. They possess a single body part. So if you have unexplained wrist pain, that's a jinn in your wrist. And you can have an exorcism done on your wrist, but it'll just move to your elbow or move to your chest. It's a very wily type of creature. And, and the show's lighthearted, right? So I'm kind of like making these jokes about the whole thing. I'm like, and it's not that I am discounting the idea of jinn at all. They probably do exist. I actually do believe they exist. We'll get to that in a second. But it's just a different part of the paranormal world that isn't often covered in Time Life books or Unsolved Mysteries and stuff like that. And so I'm doing this episode, and it was really funny. I thought it was funny. It was informative. It was all this stuff that, jinn can possess you. Unlike demons, generally you have to invite them in.
Right.
Jinn will possess you if you laugh too much. They look for extreme emotions. Jinn can attach themselves to you because they fall in love with you. And you don't have anything to do with it. They just attach themselves to you. So anyways, I did this episode, and I'm kind of going through all these steps. Well, I go to edit it, and my computer was going haywire the entire time. It's probably the hardest episode I've had to edit in 1,500 episodes. It was taking forever. Now, as I was editing it, I started picking up a weird noise. So, you go back in the edit, Kelly, I'm sure, you go back and you listen to it a couple of times. And I clearly picked up a growl.
Oh, God.
Okay, so I was like, I picked up a lot of car noises. I picked up a lot of my neighbor's dog barking, but I've never had a growl, and it was right. And it was when I was talking about jinn falling in love with humans. I picked up two things I had never picked up before. One, a growl, which I think was an EVP. And one of them is more innocuous, a bird singing outside my window. I've been recording my podcast for 7 years. I've never picked up a bird singing outside my window. Okay, so I thought that was weird. I went in and re-recorded the second half of the episode explaining what I had found about the first half of the episode. So now I'm doubling down on all of this jinn stuff. And that night I go, okay, it's probably like 1 a.m. at this point. It's time to go to bed.
Yeah.
I walk in, I lay down in my bed, and the first thing I hear is coins jingling on my mattress. So what we know of jinn, another way they get themselves attached to you, is they give you money. They will put $20 bills under your couch cushions. They'll put a $5 bill in your flower pot. And they see that as rent. They see that as, if you spend this money, you've given us permission to live here. I covered a story on my show of an Islamic family living in Britain, and the mom was losing her mind because the kids kept having pockets full of $20 bills. She keeps going, where are you guys getting this money?
Yeah.
And they go, oh, we're finding it. And she ended up getting an imam to come over, and he's like, dude, you got to burn this money. This is jinn money. You guys haven't spent any of it. So anyways, when I lay down in bed, I hear quarters hitting each other, and I was like, great. Now, my bed is messy. It's covered in clothes. I go, there's a chance that quarters fell out of a pair of pants. But just to be clear, I'm going to take the 6 quarters that are on my bed, that's how many are on there, and I put them on the nightstand. I was like, I'm not going to spend those, because I don't know what's going on.
Right.
The next night, I go to bed, and there's a quarter laying right on my mattress.
Oh, God.
A totally different quarter sitting there. I move it. I haven't told this part of the story on the podcast. I move that quarter off the bed. The next night I go to bed, there's a quarter sitting right on the mattress.
Oh, my God.
So I go, you know what? Here's the thing. I go, it's very, at this point, I'm thinking it's pretty likely it's a jinn. The first time, it could have been a bunch of quarters falling out of a pair of jeans I threw on the bed. 2 quarters appearing in the same location 2 nights.
Yeah.
And then the final night, and this was probably about 5 nights ago, give or take, I was laying in bed on my side, trying to fall asleep, but I'm awake, and I hear a strange noise outside my bedroom window. And when I say strange, it was a rhythmic tapping, but I couldn't describe it to you. You know how you can hear a noise and go, well, that sounded like wood on metal, or that sounded like something metal hitting something plastic. I could not compare it to anything. But I'm on my side, so I only have one ear. So what do? You roll over on your back so you can hear with both ears.
Right.
When I rolled over on my back, I saw a 4-foot-long ribbon of black smoke. It was about a foot wide, and it's floating right over me. and I watch it fly out the window.
Oh.
And since then, nothing. I haven't had any experiences at all, which I'm very grateful for. I don't want a djinn floating around me. Mm-hmm. They're not to be trifled with. Some are good, some are bad. They're not as, black and white as a demon is, but either way, it's too powerful. Mm-hmm. It's too powerful. I don't want something like that. And, and what's interesting, too, it's out of my culture. I've talked a lot about on the show. I go, what if a djinn comes to America and a Catholic priest doesn't know what he's up against? He's treating it like a demon. Or what if you have a biblical demon go to the Middle East or to China? Mm-hmm. And it's out of people's realm of possibility. And what's interesting is I've covered a lot of djinn stories, and I cover modern day ones. Mm-hmm. And so many of them end with, eventually the djinn said he's leaving. He gets exorcised, and they always say, and so the djinn went to America. Huh. There's so many stories that end with the exorcism finally taking place and the djinn going, see you guys later, I'm going to America. Oh my God. Is super weird.
That's weird.
And I kind of worry that all of our paranormal investigators, with all of their ghost knowledge and demon knowledge, would they be prepared if they began encountering djinn, which require different communication skills, different exorcism skills?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you're talking about that, it's like something was scratching the back of my neck. Yeah. And normally I don't ever do this on a show, but I'm like, I have to scratch back there. I'm sorry. But that's interesting. And not only that, have you, and I can't remember, I know you do your show, but I can't remember. Do you interview individuals as well with your webcam, or do you just talk about the types of stories and stuff that you do?
Yeah, I don't do interviews. I don't really have the technology for it. Like this setup, I know you do a great job with taking two different audio streams and making it sound seamless. Mm-hmm. No, it's mostly me finding stories online or researching them in books and things like that, and then telling them on the show, and then doing a little exploration of it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, here's a ghost story. For example, the Payless Shoe Source ghost boy. And so I tell that story, and then I go, so why did it happen this way? Why didn't he show up as a normal boy? Mm-hmm. Why isn't he haunting the street? So we would tell the story, and then we talk a little bit about how it applies to ghost lore or the paranormal world in general, and then we go on to the next segment, which I love. I love hearing a good ghost story.
I know.
But I also love going, okay, but why?
Yeah.
I believe in the ghost story. I'm not saying I don't think it's real, but why is it appearing this way? Mm-hmm. I love that second part too.
Yeah.
Which interviews do. Interviews do that all the time.
Yeah, no, and the reason why I asked that of you is because I do know, and I've been asked this question myself when I get interviewed myself. So, not only do I do interviews, but I also get interviewed a lot. And so the big question was, have you ever had anything come through your webcam or into your space after you've done an interview with somebody or whatnot, or some weird things start to happen? And the answer I have is usually, it depends, and it depends on usually, yes. Now, whatever happened back here, as you're talking about your story, it was getting more intense, and I had no choice but to just kind of, I don't ever have that. So for me to have that for the very first time ever, especially when I'm doing an interview, usually, like sometimes, for example, you're not supposed to touch your nose because then people think that you're lying, right? Well, there are times when I just sit here like this, and all of a sudden something wants me to itch my nose for some ungodly reason, and it's like you fight it, and you sit here like. So my question to you is this, because I don't know if something just occurred, because it could have. I have seen things on camera before when I've interviewed people. I've seen orbs go around people and go into these haunted dolls that they want to show me. I had one gal who showed me all her haunted dolls behind glass, and I had and I don't get these. I don't get migraines. If I do, you know that I'm getting sick or something. I had such a migraine by the time she was done showing me, join this one, so-and-so. And I'm like, my head is busting. And, you know, so have you ever had that before? Because when you get interviewed, or am I the only one interviewing you? But, you know, interviewing you, where something kind of quirky all of a sudden starts happening in your environment.
You're the only one I think I've done a podcast interview with. I did a lot. I'll be honest. I'm picky, because you don't know, and because I trust you. Yeah. Right. We're talking to each other, and like you said, there's hundreds of thousands of people who believe in this stuff, but you get people who just want to make a fool of you.
I know.
And listen, I'm fine with being the butt of a joke, but and it's funny. Ever since you said that, I want to keep scratching my nose.
You know, he's lying, you know, yeah.
But yeah, so no, I've done, this is my second interview with you, and I did an interview with Jeremy on Into the Paranormal.
Oh yeah, he's big. Yeah, he's big. But I'm flat. I love talking with you. Yeah, it's funny that it's been 3 years between segments, but so the here's the interesting thing, and I should probably stop telling that Jinn story. I have maybe 4 episodes of my podcast that I have labeled cursed episode. Because the story itself is told to me and said, hey, listen, everyone I tell this story to has had some weird stuff happen to them. Yeah. Or during the recording process, something will happen, like especially if I pick up an EVP and I don't know what it is. I want to warn my listeners, but it's funny because then when I'm just talking about it, I didn't even think about that. I didn't think about anything that would pop up, and you were having a reaction. Oh yeah, to it. Yeah, I never have this. I never have it.
Interesting.
It's like, what happened to me is that it got more intense. First, it starts out like, the last time, by the way, something like that affected me like that was when I was in Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum, and I will not ever go back in there because I had such an experience and shut the place down for 8 minutes. Yeah. What happened was I was getting, someone asked me, have you ever been scratched? I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, very lightly, and, back here. And what was real interesting is as you were telling your story, all of a sudden I was feeling like I was getting scratched all over again in Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum. I'm not promoting it. I'm just saying this is where it happened. And so all of a sudden I'm like, just work through it. Just pretend like you're not feeling a thing. And then as you kept going on and everything, I'm like, what the heck is going on with me? I've got to do something. So that was very interesting. But you know what? There is this is what the discussion was that I was having with this guy who was interviewing me. He's like, have you ever had really weird stuff happen to you once you start doing? Yes, I have had things come through the camera. I have had things, maybe, I don't know. I've never really heard of reports, though, of anything here going to you. So you'll have to let me know if you have a really weird occurrence. But I think it's very fascinating, too. Like, I don't know if it creates its own topa in and of itself, and then it becomes this thing after you've talked about it a number of times or whatever, or just the words itself. It's kind of spooky, and it's interesting. Yeah. Jason, tell everybody how they would get a hold of you if they wanted to reach out to you or possibly interview you or whatever, or listen to your show. Go ahead and give us an idea as to how all this might happen.
So if you want to get a hold of me, deadrabbitradio@gmail.com is going to be my email address. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. If you want to listen to the podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio is on every major podcast platform, Apple, Spotify. It's also available on YouTube under Dead Rabbit Radio. And with 1,500 episodes of a backlog, there's probably something more than one episode you might be interested in. But if you also have paranormal stories you like to share, you can send them to deadrabbitradio@gmail.com. I'd love to hear them.
Well, again, we'll have you back. And on behalf of the show and myself, thank you so very much for being on the show. Thank you for watching and listening to Paranormal Latte Podcast. We have been broadcasting on the United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Radio Networks, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans, as well as several listening platforms. The content, music, and creative sound effects as heard on Paranormal Latte Podcast are copyrighted and licensed commercially to Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Please do not reproduce in any manner without the express permission of Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz, Diamond Point Entertainment, LLC, Paranormal Universal Press, LLC, Paranormal Latte Podcast, and or any affiliated networks such as the United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Networks. The opinions and information expressed by the guests, hosts, and sources as heard and seen on the Paranormal Latte Podcast are not necessarily those of Diamond Point Entertainment, LLC, Paranormal Universal Press, LLC, Paranormal Latte Podcast, and the United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Networks, as well as their producers. Although the content of the shows may be interesting, the information and opinions within are deemed for entertainment purposes only. Subscribe to continue your enjoyment and interest, and thank you for making Paranormal Latte Podcast part of your day. Now that was good.